ओम अज्ञानातिमिरान्धकाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्णचैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मोकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणम्। Hare Krishna. So we are beginning chapter 7. So here is the overall summary of chapter 6 in short. We can go in depth, but for now we'll just go in short. So if anybody can read for me, Archana Mataji, can you read this, if you can see this clearly?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. In chapter 6, Krishna outlines the path of Dhyana Yoga, that is Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Path, a mechanical meditative practice meant to control the mind and senses and focus one's concentration on Paramatma, the Super Soul, the form of Krishna within the heart.
If you see here, a yogi is meditating. So he's practicing Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Path, starting with Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So those are the limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, Niyama is about do's and don'ts. Asanas are the practices done to keep the body healthy. And then Pranayama are the breathing exercises. And then real process begins, which is the meditation Dhyana. And then when the meditation prolongs for a longer period, it's called Dharana. When it attains perfection, it's called Samadhi. So that is Ashtanga Yoga. And that was the focus of the chapter. And how a yogi actually situates himself to practice this process is explained in detail in the chapter. But if you notice, Krishna says this path is a mechanical meditative process. It's a mechanical process. Meaning it's not, it doesn't involve consciousness as much. You know, you focus your breathing. The focus is on the mind. Mind is a material element. It's not a spiritual element. Mind, or you're focusing on your breathing exercises. So in this way, the whole process focus finally primarily on the mind. So that's why it's called a mechanical process. So the Bhakti Yoga is not a mechanical process. If you understand Bhakti Yoga, because there in Bhakti, the essential element is not the ritual aspect, it is the spiritual aspect, which is the heart. So you have to pour your heart. So that affection towards Lord is the most essential element of the Bhakti process. Because that is not there in the Ashtanga Yoga, it's considered a mechanical process. So it's a mechanical process to control the mind and senses and focus one's attention on Paramatma. Ultimately, the goal of yogi is to focus on Paramatma within the heart. Next, read, Mataji. Can you read again? Anyone else can read? Aranya Mataji, can you read?
Sure, Prabhuji. One can advance in yoga through detached work without the desire for sense gratification. This can be achieved by controlling the mind. Such a yogi sees happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor, pebbles, stones, and goals as the same. When further advanced, he regards well-wishers, the envious, the pious, and sinners equally. At that stage, the yogi, yoga rudha stage, can even give up nishkama karma yoga.
So in the beginning stages of yogi started meditating, but initially he should perform detached work without the desire. Meaning there is no desire for enjoying the fruits of his actions, right? Generally, any day, anytime we perform action, the focus is on the fruit, right? Oh, if I do this, I get this. If I cook like this, I get to eat this kind of nice prasadam. Or so the focus is generally on the fruit. But when we perform work without the desire for the mentality to enjoy the fruit, right? So such a yogi, slowly as he performs work in that way, right? So such a person slowly
Aditya,
just tell me. So such a yogi naturally sees, as he practices this kind of work in his life, he will start seeing happiness and distress to be same, heat and cold to be the same. Meaning he does not perceive these things differently. Generally, we react differently, right? For different experiences. For different impetuses, we respond differently. For honor, we will be happy. For dishonor, we feel, because the ego gets hurt when there is dishonor. Somebody insults us, or somebody scolds us. So there is dishonor. Immediately we feel bad. But a yogi who is advanced, he will not feel that kind of a dishonor. For example, a devotee, if you take a devotee, right? A devotee thinks when there is dishonor, he thinks actually he deserves more than that. But by God's mercy, he actually got only this much. So that's how he thinks, right? Because all the dishonor one gets is based on his past karma. A devotee understands that whatever is due only I'm getting. I'm not getting anything what is not due for me. And so by going through that, I'm actually exhausting that bad karma, right? And in the process, he doesn't complain. He in fact surrenders to God more. And similarly, he sees pebbles, stones, and gold as the same. Like for example, for a bhakti yogi, whether a stone or a gold can be used similarly for the purpose of serving God. Stone can be used in constructing temple, gold can be used in making a necklace. So neither is for his enjoyment, either is for God's enjoyment. So he sees, he's excited about both equally. He doesn't consider them as different things. So when further advanced, he regards well-wishers, envious, and pious, and sinners equally. Is a very advanced stage. Because to see envious people and well-wishers equally is a very advanced stage. So in that stage, when a devotee becomes very pure, he sees everybody equally. Right? He thinks he is the lowest of all. They are all better devotees than him. He thinks that everybody else is a better devotee than him. So at that stage, the yogi, the yoga rudha stage, can even give up nishkama karma yoga. He gives up even nishkama karma yoga. Krishna then summarizes the methodology and ultimate goal of the Ashtanga Yoga system. Right? So first he gives the the result of one becoming Ashtanga yogi. Then he talks about the exact process. Right? He summarizes the method, the steps, right? How one should sit, what is the posture, how one should do breathing exercises, sitting posture, breathing exercises, and sense and mind control, and ultimately culminate in samadhi, or consciousness fixed on the soul. So this is the process. He gave the result and he gave the process. Yeah. Can anybody read? Yeah, anybody read this one?
I can read.
Yeah.
A yoga yukta, one who has attained perfection in yoga, has a steady mind fixed on the supreme. He is liberated, his mind is peaceful, his passions are quieted, he experiences boundless transcendental happiness. He is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulties. Thus, he is freed from all mysteries resulting from the soul's contact with matter.
And again, Krishna summarizes about the experience of a great yogi when he achieves perfection stage. Right? He experiences constant, boundless, transcendental happiness. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes the experience of a devotee who chants purely. Right? We are chanting every day, for example. When we chant purely, the experience is Anandambudi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam. Ananda Ambudi. Ambudi means an ocean. Ananda Ambudi means an ocean of happiness. Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam. Meaning, every second, a pure devotee experiences the happiness that is like a boundless ocean. Anandambudi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadana. Every minute as if he's drinking a Purna Amrita. Aswadana means, so like a nectar, a person who is drinking constantly nectar and is experiencing limitless and boundless happiness. That is the experience of a pure devotee. So similarly, a yogi, actually yogi's happiness is considered to be like 1/1000th time of the pure devotee's experience of happiness. Even though both are transcendental happiness, a devotee experiences 1000 times more happiness compared to a practitioner of Ashtanga yoga. And once he experiences that absolute truth, right? Once he experiences the transcendental bliss, he is never shaken. Means he will never be confused about the goal of life. He is clear now. Even in the midst of the greatest difficulties, right? Even though there are challenges, everything is like, once you write an IIT exam, you find every other exam is like a simple exam, right? So similarly, once you achieve that perfectional stage, you know how to deal with everything else. Nothing really shakes up. You have the idea of what is the absolute truth. So nothing is really going to turn you around. Thus, he is freed from all miseries resulting from the soul's contact with matter. All the miseries of this world are because of the soul's contact with matter. As soon as soul comes in contact with matter, right, all the material miseries start for the jiva. So, and once a devotee or a yogi achieves that perfection in his, for example, for us, it is through bhakti yoga, which is primarily chanting and hearing. Chanting brings 99% of our perfection. And then hearing. Hearing means hearing about Lord Krishna, qualities of Lord Krishna. So this chapter is fully about, who is Krishna really, right? So we'll understand more about that. Next, read this one. Anybody?
I can read Prabhuji. Arjuna complains, however, that the system of Ashtanga Yoga is too difficult to practice, for the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it seems to me more difficult than controlling the wind. Krishna replies that controlling the mind is indeed difficult, but it is possible by constant practice and by detachment.
So now Arjuna, after hearing the practices and the perfection of Ashtanga Yoga, he tries to see how, if I can, he puts himself in the position of a yogi and tries to think about it. And he plainly says, mind is restless, turbulent, and obstinate and very strong. How can I even practice this Ashtanga Yoga? I can't. I can control wind, but I can't practice this Ashtanga Yoga process that you have given. Krishna says, with abhyasa and vairagya, you can achieve this thing by constant practice and detachment. Abhyasa and vairagya. If you detachment means detachment from sense gratification. Do not try to enjoy with your senses in this world. And constant practice means seriously focused practice of Ashtanga Yoga. With these two, you can basically make progress in this path. Then Arjuna gets another doubt. First thing he complains, I can't do this. Second thing he says, what if a yogi doesn't complete the process in this life? He already given up material enjoyment. He's not enjoying that. Now he tried all his life for achieving perfection and he couldn't achieve that. What happens to him, right? So that is a valid, practical question. Yeah, please read, anyone.
Yes, Prabhu. Arjuna then inquires about the fate of the yogi who falls from yoga practice before attaining perfection. Krishna replies that such an unsuccessful yogi, taking a future auspicious birth in a wealthy, pious, or wise family, resumes his practice and, after many births of such practice, attains perfection. Lord Krishna concludes his account of this difficult yoga system by declaring that one who worships him faithfully is, in fact, the best of all yogis.
Okay, so Arjuna inquires, hey, Krishna, what happens if a yogi cannot attain perfection? Right? Does he lose everything? Generally in this world, so suppose you achieved $1 billion or a high status in or a president post or something, and then you die, you lose everything, you start from zero in the next life. But for a yogi, if he has done like 80% of his yoga practice in this life, whether it is bhakti yoga or Ashtanga yoga or dhyana yoga, jnana yoga, any yoga, the 80% that he has done will continue to be his credit in the next life. Meaning he will start from 81st percentage. And also his next birth is facilitated in such a way that his yoga practice can resume right away. It doesn't take much long. Meaning at a very young age itself, before 10 years itself, these people who were already yogis and who have made advances in the past life, they will get an opportunity to connect to spiritual path right away, early in their life, right? And basically start advancing from where they have stopped in the previous life. So that is the facilitation that, it could be a wealthy family so that he doesn't need to worry about, making his both ends meet, or a pious and wise family where they actually, wise family means a family that puts spiritual life at the forefront instead of material well-being. Right? So in that way, the boy or girl gets the opportunity to practice at a very young age, spiritual life. And Krishna also says, he acknowledges that this process is very difficult, but there is a hope that by declaring that one who worships him faithfully is in fact the best of all yogis. He says, one who worships me is the highest of all yogis. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gater antaratmana shraddhavan labate yoga samema yukta tamo mataha. 649. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gater antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yoma same yukta tamo mataha. Very famous verse. Yoginam api sarvesham, and of all the yogis, madgater antaratmana. Madgater means abiding in me, always thinking of me. Right? One with great faith who always abides me, thinks of me within himself. Shraddhavan bhajate yoma. Shraddha, with Shraddha, he does what? Bhajate yomam, to whom? To Krishna, and renders transcendental loving service to me. Same yukta tamo mataha. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga. Means Krishna is clearly saying this is the highest yoga and is the highest of all. And that is my opinion. Mataha, my opinion. So this is in Krishna's perspective, or the opinion by Krishna, who is the supreme lord of everything. He says there is nothing better than a person who performs yoga by always remembering about me, thinking about me, making him is the goal of life. You see, it's very clear. Bhagavad Gita very clearly says about this. We may not be, aware of Bhagavad Gita. That's why we consider so many other paths. If a person understands Bhagavad Gita in a proper Guru Parampara, he cannot take to any other process other than Bhakti Yoga. Very clear with so many verses. So in conclusion, linking with the Supreme, yoga is thus superior to asceticism, tapasya, fruity work, karma, and empiricism, jnana, and of all the paths of yoga, meaning karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, hatha yoga, raja yoga, bhakti yoga, loving devotion service to Krishna, is declared to be the culmination of the highest. So 6th chapter ends by declaring, hey, Krishna told all the paths like karma yoga, and he talked about knowledge, and then he talked about dhyana yoga, how to practice dhyana yoga. He declared the methodology of the practice. But towards the end, of all the yogis, who he says the best? One who meditates on me, right? Bhajate yoma samo mataha, right? So with all his mind on me, one who performs that way is the highest of all, right? Because that is not something, because for many people, their ego stops them to surrender to God. So that's why they have to take any other paths like karma yoga. They do not consider bhakti yoga because they think that surrender to somebody is something low. He doesn't think that. But Krishna clearly says that is the highest. If you can do that, that is the best. Right? So now we begin the 7th chapter. Synopsis. So 6.47 we just read it. Right? So the best of all yogi, a yogi who always thinks of him, thinks of Krishna in devotion. That is the best of all yogis. And what does he do? He concentrates on him in full faith. That's what he does. So that is chapter 6. Now to concentrate on someone, you need to know the person, right? You need to know what are his qualities, what are his characteristics, what are his opulences, what are his nature. You need to know more about that. So that is why this chapter is titled The Knowledge of the Absolute. Because to meditate, what is the conclusion of 6th chapter? Hey, if you want to know the absolute, you need to basically meditate on me, Krishna says. But to meditate on Krishna, you need to know how great is Krishna. You cannot just sit down on meditation and think that I will focus on Krishna without knowing his true nature. What is absolute truth? What is Krishna? We need to know clearly. So, knowledge of the absolute, meaning what are his opulences? Why we call Krishna as God? Why not anybody else as God? Right? So, what distinguishes this personality Krishna to be really called as God? To designate him as God. Right? Anybody can say this Baba, that Baba can say I am also God. But he will produce, some vibhuti from his hand. Do we accept him as God? We accept only until we know about actually the knowledge of the absolute. Once we know this, what are the characteristics of God are truly, once we know that, we cannot accept anything fake as God. Just like when you know what are the true characteristics of gold, you won't ever accept any fake gold as gold, correct? So similarly, we need to know, to meditate on God, to absolutely love God, we need to know the characteristics of God. So that characteristics, to know that character, we need to know, understand the knowledge of the absolute. So that is the context for this chapter. So how do you know the knowledge of the absolute? So knowing knowledge by the process of hearing, correct? And who is the best person to share the knowledge of God? Anybody? Can anybody answer? Who can tell the best about God? Who can share us? Anybody can unmute yourself and share, please.
Guru.
Yes, a guru who is coming in, who is a bona fide guru, right? Meaning a guru who has received knowledge from absolute source. Why do I say absolute source? Absolute source, and he has transmitted the message as it is without any concoction or interpretation of his own. Yes, that's a valid answer. But what is the source of Guru's knowledge? What is the absolute source of Guru's knowledge?
Parampara, Guru Parampara.
Yes, Guru Parampara, yeah. Guru receives the knowledge from his Guru, and that Guru gets the knowledge from his Guru. So in that way, there is a Guru Parampara. And where will the Guru Parampara has to begin? Who has to teach the first Guru or the disciple? Who is
The
the
Supreme
Krishna
Personality
teaches
of
to Brahma.
Godhead.
correct? Yeah, that's the main point I want. So it is only Krishna who can tell about himself, right? Nobody can really understand Krishna's. Even in this chapter, we'll hear Name. Not even Devatas, demigods, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Vayu, Shiva. Nobody understands my opulences. Okay, even Brahma gets bewildered when Lord Krishna was performing pastimes in Vrindavan. Sometimes he would eat from his friend's hand what is already eaten by him, right? With Gopa boys, he would be acting in that way. He was playing, frolicking in a very casual way. And Brahma gets completely bewildered. How can my worshipable Lord can eat from the hand of another Gopa boy? There is something wrong. I need to test whether really he is God or not. So he comes down and tries to steal his boyfriends, Krishna's boyfriends. Right? tries to hide them. And immediately, Lord Krishna knows about this. He immediately expands into so many boys, right? And the days go on. The boys would go home, and every mother would love their boy even more than they were loving their boy before, because now these boys are Krishna themselves, right? And time passes, and Brahma gets bewildered. What's happening with, how come Krishna is not bewildered? He comes back to him to check as to what's happening with Lord. At the time, Krishna wouldn't even look at Brahma. And Krishna was there, and Brahma assembles around a place nearby. And from many other universes, Brahma is the head of a universe, right? The 14 planetary system. There are so many millions of other universes, and there are many other Brahmas from other universes would come and pay obeisances to Lord Krishna. And our Chaturmukha Brahma, our Brahma had 4 heads, so he's called Chaturmukha Brahma. And other universes have, there are bigger universes, and the Brahmas are far more qualified than our Brahma. And they were all coming and paying obeisances. And our Brahma gets bewildered. What's happening? His head totally reels around. And he immediately falls down at the feet of Lord and surrenders to him, accepts him. So in this way, even Lord Brahma gets bewildered. What to speak of any other demigods? Right? So nobody knows, in truth, about Lord Krishna's full extent of potencies. So it is only him he has to reveal about himself. That is when one can know about him. Just like a created object cannot know about the creator itself. Right? If I create something, that object will never know about me completely. So similarly, we are all sourced in Lord, so we can never know until the Lord himself reveals. And even Lord will not reveal everything. He will reveal to the extent we need, so that we can connect to him back. Right? Knowing Krishna as the source of, so what are the things we need to know? Basically, that Krishna reveals in this chapter are knowing Krishna as the source of matter and spirit, and Krishna controls the modes of material nature. The impious never surrender. So these are all the sections of this chapter. The impious never accept Krishna, so they never surrender, and pious will do. Surrendering to demigods and impersonalism. Krishna talks about everything here in this chapter. What is the result of worshipping demigods, meaning other living entities, right, who are empowered representatives of material world. Bewilderment of living entities and freedom by knowing Krishna. So these are the aspects Krishna discusses in this chapter. So the first section, there are 6 sections. The first section, 7.1 to 3, which we'll cover today, talks about knowing Krishna in full by hearing about him. So the only way to know about Krishna is, what is it? It is only by hearing. You cannot speculate. Krishna may be this, Krishna may be that. No, we cannot speculate. Using our mind, we cannot understand. Only by hearing from absolute sources. Absolute sources meaning the sources that do not change the information as it. Anytime the message is changed, it doesn't have the same effect. So it should be heard from authoritative sources. That's the only way to know. Let's read the verses. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Maya Shaktah Manah Pardha Yogam Yunjan Madhashraya Asamsayam Samagram Mam Yathagyasya Tachrunu. Try to hear. Yeah, what is the translation? Please read.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt.
How by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me. You see very clearly the word mad ashraya, maya shaktah manah parda, yogam yunjan madhashraya. Asaktah manah, mind attached. Mayi means to me. Who is saying? Shri Bhagavan Vacha. It doesn't say Sri Krishna Vacha. Right? Bhagavan means the Supreme Lord. Right? The literal word. So that's why Vyasdev clearly differentiates. When he talks about Krishna, he doesn't say Sri Krishna Vacha. No, he doesn't say that. when in the scriptures, when a personality speaks, his qualitative name is mentioned. Like for example, Sri Arjuna Vacha, right? Dhritarashtra Vacha. When gopis speak in Bhagavatam, Gopya Uchuhu, the gopis are speaking. So in this way, Shiva Uvacha is mentioned in Bhagavatam also. But when Lord Krishna speaks, it's mentioned as Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Maya Shaktah Manah Partha, Yogam Yunjan Madhashraya. What is it say? To me, mind attached, O son of Partha, Yogam, self-realization, Yunjan, practicing in consciousness of me, Madhashrayaha, Asamsayam, without any doubt. Don't doubt, you will achieve perfection. Samagrama, Yata Nyasyasi Tashranu. Here with full attention. I am giving you the highest secret to you. Hear carefully. Okay? This will relieve you from all doubts you have in your mind. Does this process work? That process work? Don't worry about anything. Hear me carefully, you will achieve highest perfection. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. Lord therefore says to Arjuna, Tat Shrunu, hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him, one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna conscious person. Right? One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. This is a beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just read. 2nd chapter. I'm actually teaching Bhagavatam to other students. We are just doing 2nd chapter right now, 1st canto. The beautiful verse here. Shinvatam Swakatah Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Vidyantastohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yuttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Tada Rajastamo Bhava Kamalobhadayaschaye Cheta Etaye Anavriddham Sthitam Sattve Prasidati Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogatah Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Uktasangasya Jayate Vijyate Hridaya Grandis Chidyante Sarva Samsaya Kriyante Chasya Karmani Ashta Eva Atmanishware. To hear about Krishna from Vedic scriptures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as his best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing about him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotion service of the Lord. By development of devotion service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotion service, and understands the signs of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of asamsayam samagramam, understanding of the absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the signs of Krishna. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami aseshatah yajnatvaneha bhuyanyat jnatavyam avasishyate. Jnanam teham savijnanam. So both phenomenal and numinous knowledge. Yeah, can anybody read the translation?
I shall
Yeah.
now declare.
So,
Sorry.
Yeah, read
I
what.
shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know.
See, this is a bold claim. Once you know this, there is nothing further remains to be known. So Krishna is giving the highest of all the highest knowledge, highest of the highest knowledge. Phenomenal and numinous. Numinous means vijnana. Phenomenal means knowledge. Yeah, phenomenal means jnana. Jnanam and vijnana. Jnanam means knowledge, right? In science, you have theory and practice. Similarly, in spiritual knowledge, you have jnanam and vijnana. Right? Vijnana means realized knowledge. Jnana means theoretical knowledge, right? Phenomenal and numinous. One needs, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, we study that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. Correct? We are not this physical body, but we are a spirit soul. But how do you know? How do you realize that? Until you realize it's a theoretical knowledge, correct? So for that, you need practice. What practice? You need to practice yoga. For example, we are all chanting the holy name. So chanting is the process for realization. Realizing what? Realizing your true nature, that you are not this body, your spirit soul. And you are part and parcel. That is only a part knowledge. It's not the full knowledge. One should understand that you are not this body, your spirit soul, which is eternal. There is no death. There is no birth. It's eternally liberated, full of bliss. That is the true nature of the jiva. Not only that, it also is subservient to God, absolute truth. Okay? Jivera Swarupa hai Krishnera Nityadas. He is a servant of God for all eternity. Okay? In that exchange of loving devotion service, he experiences the true nature, true bliss. Right? In that bhakti, he actually experiences the true bliss. So not only he understands he is not this body, spirit soul, he also understands that he is actually servant of God. And the highest engagement for him is to engage in his devotion service, loving devotion service. Right? So that is realized knowledge, right? So So when we study Bhagavad Gita, we only understand the theory aspect. But when we practice chanting and other devotional practice like eating prasadam, offering to God, and performing the archanam at home, through these all these Navavida Bhakti, one achieves Vijnana, means one realizes this knowledge over a period of time, okay, as he purifies his heart. Krishna says, once you hear this knowledge, you have nothing else to know. Let's hear what that is. Okay? It's a very bold claim. Yeah. So, in the beginning of 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes, and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. Okay? The Vedas say, Kasmin u bhagavo vijnate sarvam idam vijnatam bhavati. One of the famous verses. Manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Manushanam sahasreshu, of the thousands of men or women for that matter, many people endeavor for perfection. Sahasreshu, thousands of people endeavor for perfection. Kaschid yatati siddhaye. Siddhaya means for perfection, endeavoring for perfection. Yatatam api siddhana, of those who achieve perfection, right? Hardly one knows me. Kaschin mam veti tattvataha. Kaschin means very few. Someone, very few people really know me. Okay? Can you please read the translation?
Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth.
See here, the rarity of a pure devotee. There are many people who try perfection, try to achieve perfection in various ways. But the first thing is, out of thousands of people, only like few people endeavor for perfection of life. Right? For example, how many people are there in Seattle and how many are there in our class today? Right? Very few people endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, for example, they achieve perfection, hardly one knows me in truth, because they may not be following pure devotional path. So they may not be really knowing who is Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. Ishvaraha Paramah Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Radhe Radhe Govinda, Sarvakarana Karanam. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. And although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotion service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy, as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without the knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantika Harer Bhaktir Utpatayeva Kalpate. So devotion service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. If a person claims that he is practicing Bhakti Yoga, but what he is practicing is not in line with Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra, where the specific practices of devotion service are mentioned, it is simply a disturbance in the society. It doesn't really yield any good Krishna, basically Prabhupada is explaining how, a devotee who is practicing pure devotional service is very, very rare. Right? And how does one get realization? That is mentioned here. Atah Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Grahyam Indriya Sevonmike Jihvado Swayam Yeva Spuratyada. No one can understand Krishna as he is by his blunt material senses. But Lord himself reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him. So we cannot understand Krishna. Krishna has to reveal himself to us. God has to reveal. And when will God reveal? Only when he is pleased with our service to him. Being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service, Krishna will reveal himself to them. Right? That is the only way to basically understand God. Yeah. So we will end here. Any questions on what we discussed? So far, Krishna didn't reveal any details. He just declared how rare it is to know God. Right? He just created some kind of appetite for us to learn by telling how great this knowledge is. Now we actually study that knowledge in the next session. From 4th verse, it's a beautiful narration. Again, this chapter and next few chapters are, please don't miss. If you have friends are missing, please call them. These are nectarian. So every verse would reveal you such great details of greatness of Lord Krishna. You will relish. Krishna says, in this verse, right? Earth, water, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All together, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. You see, when all these elements of nature, what are they? Ultimately, they are actually energies of the Supreme Lord. In this way, he will reveal a lot more knowledge in this chapter. We'll discuss more next. Okay? So we'll end the session here. If you have no questions, we'll end it here. Any questions? Yes, please go ahead. Anybody? Okay, I hope everything is clear or nothing is clear.
It's clear, Prabhuji.
So I think we haven't discussed philosophy aspect. Next week I'm going to discuss more. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your enthusiasm, your time. It inspires me in this way. You're all sincerely attending, and in this way you will, you should chant as well every single day, and slowly you will inspire your family, your kids, and they will also get the opportunity to seriously practice devotional service, and your life will be perfect, their life will be perfect. What more do we want in this material world? There is nothing better to achieve in this material world other than this. You will realize over a period of time, if not now. Okay? So we'll end it here. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji.